Welcome back to the latest edition of our entertainment show tonight. As this week we feature a cult classic TV series. Our series this week is all about the Dukes of Hazzard, as we look back on the cult classics TV series of the 70s and the 80s. And our episode this week we're going into is called Comrade Duke. It aired on February the 11th, 1983. One of the guest stars of this show, and he played a character, a Russian called Borov, the one and only Hank Garrett. Hank, an absolute pleasure to talking to you today, sir.
Oh, it's my pleasure, I assure you.
Hank, first of all, the Dukes of Hazzard. You've been in an awful lot of projects throughout your career, and I guess starred in an awful lot of TV appearances, in movies, etc. How did the opportunity for the Dukes of Hazzard arise on Hank Garrett's doorstep?
Well, I had gotten a call because I'm also a comedian. I was working with Tony Bennett for 4 years. I was his opening act. So someone knew in my act, I did a lot of dialect. One of the dialects I did was Russian.
Okay.
So they said, can you play a Russian KGB agent? And they explained that I had to come to the United States to try and get this young lady that had left our country to go to the Olympics, and she wouldn't come back. So it was my job, my partner. So I had to speak with the Russian accent to get further than I was to try to bring lady back to Russia where she belongs.
And Hank, in terms of arriving on the set of The Dukes of Hazzard 1983, you're a well-established actor. Had you previously worked with any of the cast beforehand, before you arrived on The Dukes of Hazzard? Had you done a bit with some of the actors beforehand?
Sorrel Burke.
Sorrel Book. Yeah.
Yes, wonderful gentleman, so talented. And the sheriff, I had worked with him.
James Best, yeah.
Yes. Right. And so it was like old home week, and they knew me, fortunately, because someone remembered me from when I was a professional wrestler. In fact, I'm in the Wrestling Hall of Fame.
I know, yeah, I was just looking there.
So it was just a pleasure playing. Got a little dangerous when they cut the car in half. And so there was jagged edges, so we had to be very careful of. But other than that, it was wonderful.
And I suppose, Hank, you've seen so many wonderful stunts teams in your time and being on sets where the stunt teams were amazing. Were you sort of taken back by what you saw on the Dukes of Hazzard in terms of those car chase scenes, in terms of the sort of action, it was rip-roaring for its time in the 80s?
It was amazing, especially to see that pass from a car to an airplane. The stuntmen were sensational. The young lady who did the stunt, she was a light body weight, so any wind kind of like blew her away from getting near the ladder leading to the plane. So it was quite a dangerous stunt, and we were all of us holding our breath to see her go from the car to the plane. Amazing.
And I suppose, Hank, when you arrived, we all know for most of the Dukes of Hazzards for their time, Tom Wopat and John Schneider were the main two stars who played Bo and Luke Duke. But you had two sort of different Dukes from the time you appeared. Kai Duke, played by Byron Cherry, and then Vance Duke, played by Christopher Mayer, sadly, who's no longer with us. In terms of appearing on set with them, and did you feel that they were very much in their groove? This was roughly 17 episodes in. They were there for one season and one season only. But did you get the feeling that they were very slick, that they settled into that sort of Duke sort of role? taking on big shoes in terms of Tom Wopat and John Schneider.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It was a disappointing change. John and I are old friends. In fact, I ran into him not too long ago. We were at an event, and with old home week, grogging and kissing because we missed each other so. Wopat, wonderful, wonderful actor. John Schneider, incredible guy. Gentlemen at all times. They treated everyone so warmly. It was a pleasure going to work every morning.
And I suppose, Hank, in terms of you've appeared in so many sort of TV series, and I suppose at the time it was project to gig to gig. But when you look back in terms of a cult classic, The Dukes of Hazzard, it is absolutely monstrous to say this in terms of its popularity in all across Central America and the sort of southern states. And it has one of those TV series like the A-Team through the 80s, like Kojak, that went global. It went international. It's been dubbed in so many different languages. It's been seen all over the world. It's been aired maybe for the first time in so many countries, even to this day. So are you not surprised in one sense that the Dukes of Hazzard went global in terms of its popularity?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We never thought about it being shown in other countries. We were having so much fun doing here. And then, in fact, the first show I ever did, the first television series was Car 54, Where Are You?
Yeah.
And to see myself speaking Japanese because it became a big hit in Japan. So quite exciting.
And I suppose, Hank, it is a memorable time for you as well. And I suppose 2021, in terms of we've seen so much global concern and so much global panic, but you've brought a air of sunshine to people's world in terms of I hear you've released your sort of memoirs from Harlem Hoodlum to Hollywood Heavyweight is a recount of the glorious years of Hank Garrett, I do believe.
Yes, absolutely. How I started out, I actually lived on the streets in New York, in Harlem, living in a slum, and it was a fifth floor walk-up slum. My parents were fruit and vegetable peddlers, and I was born very late in life to them, and they just didn't have time for me. They were working 15, 16 hours a day, just trying to make a living. And so I was on the street. I actually slept in cardboard boxes, and I became a hoodlum. And someone came along, the mayor of Harlem, and he took me to the Apollo Theater, which was an African-American theater in New York. And he brought me there to meet Sammy Davis Jr.
Okay.
And Sammy Davis Jr. said to me, you're a pretty tough guy, huh? I said, yeah, I'm tough. I was 12.
Okay.
And he said, tough guys usually wind up with broken bones and scars. You're beyond that. You're either going to go to prison or you're going to die. And I had a pistol in my pocket. I was 12.
Okay.
12 years old, carrying a pistol. And he told me all these horrifying things, changed my life. He got me a job working with an all African-American band,
Okay.
Lucky Millender. I was a band boy. I said, what's a band boy? And he said, you put out the musical charts for each one of the musicians. And at the end of the evening, you put all the stuff back. And I did. Worked one evening, and he came to me and gave me $50. $50 in those days was a fortune. He said, get yourself some new kicks, shoes. My shoes were torn to shreds. In fact, the sole of the shoe was held on by a big rubber band. One thing led to another. He got me job after job after job, and I was watching other comedians. And 20 some odd years later, I'm on stage at the Sands in Las Vegas, opening for Tony Bennett. And in the audience, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, Dean Martin, and Frank Sinatra gave me a standing ovation when I got through. Excuse me. And Sammy Davis Jr. came up to me and he said, "You're a funny cat." I said, "Thank you." He said, "Where do I know you from? You look so familiar." I said, "Sam, I'm the kid that you said was going to go to prison or die." And he said, "That's you?" I said, "Yes, sir." We hugged and we cried. Wow. Two grown men standing there crying.
Hank, I just got to ask you, I suppose it's not very much every day of the week we speak to somebody who's been in the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame before Hulk Hogan was, in terms of going back that. But you're spot even before Hulk Hogan. Can I ask you, back in the early 70s, the early 60s, was professional wrestling, was it really dangerous back then? Did you actually physically get knocked up? Did you actually physically get concussions, injuries? Was it a bit more like what you see of UFC back nowadays in terms of what it was like back then?
A friend of mine who was also a pro wrestler was asked the question, "Is it really fixed?" And he said, "Would you care to see my x-rays?" I had had a physical not too long ago. And the doctor said to me, "You're a pro wrestler." I said, "Yes." "You're in the Hall of Fame." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "Have you ever been body slammed?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "How often?" I said, "How many hairs do you have on your head?" He said, "That explains a lot."
Okay.
The body slams, the concussions. And I've lost sight of my right eye from contact in that and martial arts. So yeah, you take a tremendous beating and you just play it off. But yeah.
And Hank, just in terms of some of the names you've gone up against, was there ever a time when you sort of crossed paths with Andre the Giant, or was he a bit after your time, or did you already transcended into acting at that stage?
Well, one guy I'm sure you will know the name, Killer Kowalski.
Killer Kowalski, yeah. Yeah.
Wow. He tried to destroy me.
Okay.
After meeting me, I flew in from New York. I was wrestling him in California. He meets me at the airport, takes me to breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I'm saying, what a nice guy. We get in the ring. I go to shake his hand and he slapped me right across the face.
Okay.
And I went, uh-oh. Now we get into what they call a referee's lock. We're standing there holding on. And I said, you want to go, you really want to shoot? And all I heard was, he growled at me. So he whipped me, I hit the rope, and I came back, and I was airborne, and I hit him with everything I had. I was 240 pounds. And I caught him right across the chest with an elbow. And when I threw the shot, I was looking down and I saw I hit him so hard, his feet didn't even move in reaction.
Okay.
I looked up and he said, "Is that your best shot?" After the match, in the locker room, he said to me, "Do you know what you kept saying every time you ran past me?" I said, "I ran past you?" He said, "Yes. And you kept yelling, 'Ma, Ma.'" So that was my experience with Killer Kowalski, who was for real.
Wow. Hank, I suppose from the Martial Arts Hall of Fame to professional wrestling, the memoir is such a great read from Harlem Hoodlum to Hollywood heavyweight. You've been on everything, your famous Colombo fight scene with Rob Redford, working with Charlie Sheen to Kirk Douglas, as you said, becoming the first white comedian to appear on Apollo. But in terms of, I'll just bring you back for the last minute or so, back to the Dukes of Hazzard. If you had
Sure.
one memory or one story from your time on set of the Dukes of Hazzard that maybe stuck to you even to this day, that you still remember that day or remember that conversation with someone, what would that be?
Uh, well, they were all wonderful. And John, he and I became good friends. And he said his background, there was Russian in his background. And he said, "Are you Russian?" I said, "Well, my folks were from Russia originally." He said, your dialect is so authentic. And I learned dialects from a wonderful comedian named Sid Caesar.
Okay.
And he taught me what they call dialectic gibberish. And I did it in my act. I was an Italian count. I was on a show in London, the David Frost show. And he would interview me as the Italian count. Just came
in, I just paused, I edited there for a second. No worries, I just paused the recording.
What kind of a dog do you have?
Hank, no worries. I have the recording pause and we'll edit that out. The joys of COVID-19, working from home and lockdown, you know.
Oh, sure.
Hank, you were just saying there in terms about your memories of the Dukes of Hazzard, and you remember you were saying about dialects there in terms of John Schneider complimenting your Russian dialect.
Yes. Yeah, because my parents were from Russia, and I had learned to do dialects and in gibberish. Yeah. So I mentioned I did the Italian count, who was see, I was on the David Frost show in London.
Okay.
And David would interview me every week. Excuse me.
No problem.
He would interview me and I would be a different character. In fact, at one time, he asked me to be a Chinese delivery man. I was made up. And so I would come in and he would say, "Oh, you have... What? No MSG. Whoa, David Frost. And he would translate. And he'd look at me and say, "The loo is down the hall."
Wow.
So
that's a great story. I suppose, Hank Garrett, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you today to relive your memories of the Dukes of Hazzard from your time playing Borov. The episode was called Comrade Duke.
Comrade Duke.
Dukes of Hazzard. It aired season 5, episode 17, February the 11th, 1983. And just to remind our audience, folks and listeners out there again, Hank's memoirs are coming out this year. It's from Harlem, Hollywood, from Harlem Hoodlum to Hollywood Heavyweight. Do go out, do reserve a copy, do go out to your bookstore, do order it in. It's going to be an absolute titanic read, I have to say. One that I'm greatly looking forward to myself. Hank, pleasure talking to you today, and we wish you a prosperous 2021. And
Thank you. It's
hopefully,
same to you.
and I'll have
Thank
to
you.
see that Killer Kowalski sort of match now. I'll have to try and find that up on YouTube. But Hank, pleasure, mate.
Thank you, and God bless.
Thank you. Take care.